All right, all right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bioactive Nexus. You will see that I do not have my partner in crime here, co-host Gene Bruno, because last minute he had to run to the doctor. He's not feeling well. Something's going on there. But we have two awesome guests today. We're going to have an awesome show. I'll get into that in just a minute. But again, this is our second episode for the new year, and if just to recap for the new program, the overall season theme for this year, we actually this time planned out the programming for the whole year instead of on the fly. So for us, it's the season theme is the future of bioactive science from cell to society. And so it's like a year-long journey exploring how nutraceutical science connects personal wellness, industry innovation, and planetary health. And we're really deep diving in all that. If you've been following us, we have two series: the Bioactive Insight, kind of consumer focused, and Bioactive Breakdown, which is more industry focused. And we have guests on our panel. That's one of those episodes today is that. So this is our first one in the Bioactive Breakdown. We have a whole bunch of great topics planned for this year and great guests lined up. But let me, without further ado, introduce our topic today, which is regulatory reckoning. That sounds ominous, doesn't it? Right? And the future of DSHEA and product transparency, because it's like a moving target, isn't it? It's always evolving. There's always something going on. Never know quite what's going on with the government and that. Some things stay the same and just continue along, but there's always a kind of testing that infrastructure to see if it needs to change on that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to poke at that today. So I have two awesome guests with us today. First, let me introduce Asa Waldstein. He's the founder and principal for Apex Compliance. And Asa, I'm just going to introduce you guys and let you introduce your background, how long you've been in the industry and all that. So Asa, why don't you start first with that?
Okay, I started when I had a lot more hair on my head in 2001. And
Yeah, me too.
I've really grown up in the industry. There might be some pictures floating around with, really long hair and big beards. And so, no, I started in 2001. I have a certified clinical herbalism background and really just kind of grew up in the industry, learned a lot of these regs from the inside out, working for contract manufacturers, as a supplement executive, started my own consulting company, and then now Apex Compliance, marketing compliance software. So I learned a lot of stuff from the inside out, which is FDA comes into your facility, you have a conversation with them, you learn a lot, you implement those takeaways into your facility. I've actually was making supplements during common allergen labeling law, adverse event reporting law. How do we take regs and then put them into our facility, into our products, into our marketing in a way that makes sense? So just really passionate, really regulatory geek and love finding truthful and non-misleading ways to talk about products. So really grateful to be here. Thank you again.
Well, thanks, Asa, for being a part of it. And you do your Wednesday warning letter thing every week. I see that all the time. I'm always shocked by some of the stuff you report on there. It still goes on. It's amazing. But anyway, our other guest today is Ivan Wasserman, managing partner at Amin Wasserman Gurnani. I hope I said that right. Actually, your firm actually used to be my firm for a previous company for me when Talati was part of it, Ashish. And in fact, you guys helped me get out of a jam with a company that was trying to do some shady stuff, and you guys did an awesome job for me. So, and then you joined the firm later. But Ivan, tell us about yourself, how long you've been in the industry, and so on.
Thanks for having me on. And thanks to Asa. I've admired Asa for a long time, and I think this is the first time we've been we've on stage together, but this might be our first webinar together. Yeah, just in supply side, we were on stage together. That's right.
Yeah.
And wishing Gene a speedy recovery. Gene and I have been working. I've been working on Gene's various companies for many years, and wish him a very speedy recovery. I've been remarkably. I graduated law school in 1993. And I've pretty much been working on supplement-related matters since about 96, when I stopped being a healthcare lawyer and switched to regulatory law. Remarkably, I still have my hair, and remarkably very little gray. No one can believe it. And I actually got a haircut today. I had even more this morning. Yeah, so my practice preceded DSHEA by a scotch, and I could talk about that. Um, yeah, so for about 30 years, or more than 30 years at various big law firms, I've been helping supplement companies, food companies, cosmetic companies. My practice primarily is on marketing and advertising type claims, and Ace and I can spend half an hour talking about our favorite examples of puffery, if anyone cares to listen. uh, yeah, about 8, 9 years ago, I joined my current firm, which is now called Amin Wasserman Gurnani. And what's neat about the firm is the entire firm is focused on those industries. So all of our clients, 27 lawyers, but all of our clients are focused on supplements, food, cosmetics, doing regulatory, which is going to be the talk today, as well as sort of
Yeah.
dispute stuff, which it sounds like Bill had us work on, and class actions, which we'll talk about the government today, but unlike when I started in this industry and when ASA started in this industry and when Bill, class actions are as big or bigger of a problem to a lot of companies as the government, which has been a
Yeah.
real sort of sea change over the years. So thank
Yeah.
you for having me.
Absolutely. And welcome to both of you. So, again, folks, we're going to do a little deep dive into regulatory, and if this is useful for anyone. This, like I said, it's a moving target. So, it's always good to stay up on the latest things and trends and what things are happening. That's what we're going to do today. And that, I have a little intro for that. This is a bioactive breakdown. There we go.
I like the music.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We're going to get into bioactive breakdown. So, again, where's our industry headed in terms of modernization? Because that's inevitable, I think, and or is it a reckoning? And some things, I think it might be a little both here, possibly. But well, let's start with guys. Let's start with the state of DSHEA today, where we are versus where we're going, and I think everybody always wants to know because we've all seen the news about. It's always been in the trades or whatever. It's hard to know what's fact from fiction, but are we facing reform or enforcement by attrition or whatever? So I think the first question, guys, is DSHEA broken, misunderstood, or misused? I think that's the first question. And maybe you guys can both kind of comment on your perspectives there. Whoever wants to go first.
Um, since my microphone's on and Asus is still muted, I'll say the first thing.
Yeah.
Is DSHEA broken, misunderstood, or misused? I wouldn't say DSHEA is broken. I wouldn't say DSHEA is misused. It's definitely misunderstood by the public and
Yeah.
by some of the unknowing industry for sure. I think DSHEA represented at the time an extremely creative, if you will, framework and an effective framework to allow, responsible, reputable companies to sell dietary supplements with substantiated claims that didn't sort of play in the drug lane of making disease claims, and used safe and suitable ingredients. So I think it represented a compromise. I don't know if FDA liked it at the time or not, but it allowed these markets, these effective and useful products, to continue to be what we would hope to be responsibly marketed to help people supplement their diet with various nutrients without subject to all the rigmaroles of the safety aspect of food and without going through all the rigmaroles of the efficacy and safety aspect of pharmaceuticals. So from my perspective, DSHEA is under enforced rather than broken. And the problem is, and everyone's nodding and I see why, as I mentioned, I graduated law school in 93. DSHEA was passed in 94, I believe.
Yeah.
And, at the time, the internet didn't exist. It certainly didn't exist the way it exists, the way it does today. I remember going in my law firm and someone was on some chat room. I was like, what is this? And, when we first started emailing clients, so certainly e-com, Amazon, all that didn't exist. So, the barrier to entry, or at least the barrier to getting a dietary supplement on the market to a mass audience, was extremely different than it is today, right?
Oh, sure.
I mean, the main way was to get it on a mom and pop health food store, which was limited, and you had the gatekeeper of that proprietor. Uh, the way to get it to big audiences was by infomercials, 30-minute infomercial. And I, believe you me, representing a lot of infomercial companies, and supplements were huge. But because there's only so much airtime, the Federal Trade Commission, which isn't on the agenda much today, which is the group that polices false and misleading claims, was able to actively enforce against false or misleading claims being made by dietary supplements to a mass audience on a television infomercial. You probably, anyone old enough to remember Fat Trapper and Exercise in a Bottle?
Yeah,
What
remember
great
that.
names for dietary supplements. The baseball legend Steve Garvey was the spokesperson.
Oh, yeah.
Exercise in a Bottle was literally the name of the product. And shockingly, they didn't have adequate substantiation, and the FTC went after them hard. There was Total Calcium with Bob Barefoot and Kevin Trudeau, and all these sort of legends of the scoundrels of the industry. And so that was how there wasn't a lot of them. Fast forward to 100,000 products on Amazon. Fast forward to Asa and I getting phone calls daily. Hey, I want to launch a supplement. I've got $100. Can you help me? It's just become too big of an industry for FDA or FTC to police effectively to ensure that DSHEA is being followed.
Yeah.
And so I know we're going to talk about reform later, so I'll stop there.
Yeah. Thanks, Simon. I've been in the industry almost 30 years, so I from right after DSHEA. To put some context of what you're talking about, I remember those infomercial days or whatever, and I actually did an infomercial myself, one of my products way back. And I remember we signed the deal. If you remember, 98 was the year that big pharma or consumer healthcare companies got into botanicals, right? That was the launch of Centrum Herbals. I was director of R&D for Pharma Print for that. And then there was Quanterra's, Warner Lambert's Quantera product. They had a bunch of TV. It was all TV ads then. That's what we did for Centrum as well. And then it was Bayer's One A Day Herbal, remember? And a lot. I remember we were in the middle of the product launch, we launched in 12 months, 6 products, did 225 million today's dollars first year retail, which was insanely huge. Nobody's ever done anything like that since, but we were really raising the bar on testing and standards, but I remember I think it was May of 98 is when FDA came out with guidance on structure function claims that didn't exist. So marketing was pissed at Whitehall Robbins because they had to rewrite everything. And this first time of doing structure function claims, right? And which is kind of our standard today right now, wordsmithing around that. But yeah, they were pretty creative with that. They had some really strong marketing, and they were really, really mad. Not at us, but they had to change everything and almost tank the product launch guys. So Asa, from your perspective, and so I will just say, for me, I don't think it's broken. It's just a resource challenge for the agencies. It's exploded so big now that it's impossible for them to manage. We're not the only industry they're overseeing, right? FDA's primary mandate is safety, right? So which it should be. Okay, so I'm not going to defend the FDA or beat them up either way. It's just a reality. And the reality is, I think they do the best job they can with the resources they have. So, could they do a better job? Well, we can all sit on the sidelines and say that in the industry, but the reality is, let's look at what the issues are there. So Asa, for you, what do you feel in terms of that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything I've heard. And, Ivan, your masterclass, excuse me, on DSHEA and, on how we got here and what it was like back then. Now, we wouldn't be here, right, in the supplement industry if it wasn't for DSHEA, this great framework. So as we look at it, of course, there's areas of improvement, of course, with everything. Am I the kind of person that throws lots of stones and says, everything's broken, let's fix it? No, definitely not. There's always room for improvement. But I thought the under-enforced angle was actually really really thoughtful, and I completely agree with that. Now, as we kind of dig into, kind of tangible examples, and I go into maybe areas of possible improvement, I'm looking at things like interpretation, getting deep into GMPs, like diving right in, get interpretation of finished product composition testing. We all read lots of warning letters, we talk to clients, that type of thing. And as we're looking at finished product composition testing, it's really, the interpretation based on the warning letters is really rigid. It's kind of near pharma, in my opinion. And I'm also not an FDA basher at all. We're all everyone's collegial at all the cocktail parties and stuff that we all go to. It's a small world. But if we look at kind of go deeper on finished product composition testing, just as an example, let's say that we have botanicals, a botanical blend of, a skull cap and rose hips, and we have an identity, purity, composition test on the ingredient. We have a validated blending procedure, and then we have some test parameters on the outside. That's not oftentimes enough, because then we need to develop our own test to make sure, yes, is there actually 50 milligrams of this herb in the finished product? So I know I'm jumping way in, but it's kind of just an example of, it's way it's interpreted, which I think is a little rigid. Of course, drug preclusion, kind of, jumping over to that, there's a lot of opportunity for some clarity with, what is substantial? How do we know if an IND exists? Can a dietary supplement company, should they really invest in all this research and safety data if there's already this kind of pseudo secret pharmaceutical test going on? And then the last comment is regarding the DSHEA disclaimer. So we're talking about DSHEA disclaimer, not evaluated by the FDA, that type of thing. We all are aware of it.
Yeah.
Now, I thought that enforcement discretion letter to industry that FDA put out last month was really fascinating. So if people say, what's your biggest issue with DSHEA? I'd say, well, it's that DSHEA disclaimer placement that says that the disclaimer's got to be on every label panel where a structure function occurs. And that's really annoying and unnecessary, in my opinion. Have you ever seen a label with structure function claim, DSHEA on the PDP and on the IP? No, because it's really ugly. But I really applaud FDA for coming out with this letter saying it was something, I might be paraphrasing, we have never, or we're not aware of ever enforcing the DSHEA disclaimer on every label panel enforcement. But it's fodder for plaintiff attorneys. Ivan, I don't know what you think. Is this letter to industry that FDA put out, do you think that will help slow down some of the litigation with DSHEA disclaimer placement? I'm just curious. I wanted to ask you.
I mean, I do hope it will. It's too soon, obviously, for any kind of actual data. But, clearly, if you go to a judge, right, you get the letter, you actually go to court, which is obviously rare, and you say to the judge, they're arguing, they're violating an FDA rule. They harmed my client. They harmed my client. And you in your motion to dismiss to the judge say, this is FDA saying it doesn't believe the rule is necessary. I would hope that most judges will take notice of that and dismiss those grounds of the case.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That makes me feel better. I saw that it was popped in maybe as a secondary item in the thesis lawsuit that just came out, a couple weeks ago, if that. But it seemed like it was one of those secondary or pig pile things. Good to know because, the DSHEA disclaimer on every label panel it seems minor, but it can be a major headache. I'm sure, Ivan, at your firm, you see demand letters related to this from time to time. Is that true?
Yeah, no, totally. And we have to we have to ugly up every one of our label reviews by putting, by the way, if you don't have it on every panel, even though no one does it, it's a pain in the butt. What also has always bugged me about that is they're making you say false information. So if you're following DSHEA, you're submitting your structure function claims to FDA within 30 days of making them. FDA is in fact evaluating the claim, but you have to say FDA hasn't evaluated this claim on the label,
Yeah, I know.
which has always bugged me a little bit. They haven't evaluated it for substantiation, but saying that they haven't evaluated the claim is actually not true.
That's so fascinating, and that goes back to
Yeah.
part of the enforcement side too. I mean, how many companies do follow the rules and submit their structure function claims? Not that many, but where's the stick?
There's no stick.
Not, yeah,
Yeah.
not I
No,
don't think there is one.
no, there's no.
What an easy stick that would be. And so whenever they send a warning letter saying you made the following disease claims, they know that they didn't submit the thing. So why not throw that in the warning letter?
Yeah, exactly. Let's move on here into some of the other topics here. I think, but just to close this out, kind of a yes, no. What kind of modernization do you see on the right? Well, you know what? Let's leave that for the future discussion towards the end here. But DSHEA 2.0 or something like that. I don't know. That's been talked about a lot. Mandatory product listing. We're going to get to that in a minute. But let's talk about just FDA enforcement trends and legal risk signals. We already started to touch on some of those points there. But is it because it's so difficult for the agencies to really police the industry in a really effective way, that obviously drives the behaviors of brands, right? And so, but what do you think are the biggest behaviors by product brands that are going to put them in regulatory crosshairs? Is it the same thing it's always been, or is there something new on the horizon? And, we can talk about warning letters, claims, enforcement, all that, whatever you guys want to focus on there and your experience would be great. Asa, what about you in terms of...
Sure. Yeah. Don't get me started, right? My favorite topics. I think it's a lot of the greatest hits, right? From a GMP point of view, it's obviously inadequate specifications. It's not documenting safety, cleaning, all that type of thing. But I expect to see more lower resource, with a lot of air quotes, warning letters continue. These are disease claims on websites. It's super less resource intensive to do a web search day and have an FDA investigator look at a website, find some disease claims, then go to a facility or buy a product and test it for a drug spike ingredient and that type of thing. So I expect to see these kind of lower lift type warning letters continue, but it's oftentimes disease claims on ingredients you're selling. And then I want to hear what Ivan says, but I wanted to point out this really fascinating warning letter that happened last year. And I don't know if I'm saying the word correctly, but subaltamine was cited in a warning letter. I think it was last May, so it's been a while now. But this was a warning letter where the company was putting this as an ingredient in their supplement fact panel. We have subaltamine. Apologies again if I'm butchering the name. And the basis of the warning letter was, this is not a legal dietary ingredient. And that was it. There was warning letters or drug spike. It was, this is not... this is an unallowable dietary ingredient. You're putting it on there, so we don't have to test it and say that it's drug spike. It's already on the label. But what was so strange about that one, it was perplexing, is that subaltamine was never mentioned in any warning letter that I could find. It wasn't at that time on the information on select dietary supplement ingredients and other substances, that really long, wordy thing. It has now been added. So again, it's one of those lower resource things. So I expect to see more of those type of things continue.
Yeah. Ivan, what about from your perspective, man? Do you see, same old or something new?
I think same old from the FDA side. What surprised me, and I should say, and I'll probably say it for Asa, my comments are my own. They don't reflect my firm or any of my clients.
Okay.
When Doge and Elon Musk came in early in the Trump presidency and just fired the heck out of a ton of people at FDA. I was thought, and I don't think it's resource incentive, we would see a decrease in enforcement solely because of manpower, right? Not because of intent, but solely because of manpower. Um, and in my firm's little microcosm and whatever, we haven't seen that at all. We've seen warning letters continue the same, relatively at least
Yeah.
the same frequency as they had before. Inspections continue, if not increase, maybe, which has really been a surprise given the manpower
Mhm.
limitations that I thought existed. So, anyone listening who thought that that FDA wasn't doing anything after so many people sadly got fired,
Yeah.
that's mistaken. So the two new
Yeah.
areas I think the FTC's focus has dramatically changed in
Yeah.
the last
I
10
agree.
years. They're not, the old fat trapper exercise in a bottle, Kanoki
Yeah.
foot pads that suck the toxins at the bottom of your feet. All those sort of classic health fraud cases. I haven't seen FTC going after those for whatever reason.
No.
Of course,
I think they still do their like you mentioned, they still do their internet days where they do search because it's a resource. It doesn't require a lot of resources to
yeah,
do
so they're
that.
going after
And
fake reviews, and so those
yeah,
sort of classic internet consumer fraud is going to continue at the FTC, and brands should be
sure.
careful of disclosing, influencers and fake reviews and manipulating reviews, and
Yeah.
privacy and all that kind of stuff is, I think, just gonna increase.
It's going to take all the resources just to do that. Just looking at the fact that, from a digital technology perspective, the industry obviously is transformed to that. Every product brand is either on Amazon or on their own website. It's online somewhere. So,
Oh yeah,
I think probably they probably pivoted a little bit in that. I was going to comment on what you're saying. I wondered about, you know, the cutting back in federal government, if that was going to impact anything dramatically. Um, you just confirmed what I thought, that I didn't think it would, because there probably, for sure, there is some fat in the government. It needs to be trimmed. I'm sure. But more than one person doing the same job, and redundancies. Look at big corporations; it's the same thing. The U.S. government is the number one employer in the U.S., right? So, it's a huge, huge freaking company. So for sure, there's going to be places they can trim or whatever. Uh, I will speak from my own personal experience on the IRS side. They cut out 25% of the force at the beginning of the year, and then the government shut down. My tax return has still not been processed from 2024. So I think there's an impact there. But it depends on the agency, I think. Yeah, so I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of the same old, relying heavily on electronic and digital because that's easier to do. And so, you know, if you're putting out those kind of claims electronically, well, you're certainly in the radar at some point. It's going to come up in search, especially with, that's my company, NutriSelect.aa, on where we're going with that technology is layered into all industries. I've been speaking about that in our industry. For sure, we're going to see more and more of that tech uh, accelerate the ability for the agencies to take action faster. And so I think we'll see, actually, in my perspective, I think we're going to see gradually an uptick and that sort of thing. They'll be able to do more. Will it get everything? No, I don't think it ever will. But in fact, I can envision our company, once we get launched in the market, and what we're doing is basically uh, helping consumers, servicing the end consumers to find truly science-based products, where with 100,000 products on the market, probably 70%, 80% of them don't have the science there. And I know this from my own business experience at working with M&A, with Sanofi, and looking at I won't say the brand names, but looking at potential acquisition targets that great at marketing, multi-million dollar company, but they didn't really have anything to support their claims. And that's sad, but it's true. And so I have a unique perspective from that sense. So I'm not saying I'm going to police the industry, guys, but what we're developing is actually going to be a tool for the agencies to use to accelerate. And that's coming whether we want it or not, because it's impacting all industries. So that's my perspective of kind of where that's going in terms of enforcement. So I think think you're right, Evan. I think we're going to see more of an uptick in that. I don't think it's going to be. It's kind of a trade off. Maybe there's less people, but then there's more technology coming into play to execute on what they want to do. Possibly.
Yeah, and I find that really fascinating, Ivan, and thank you for pointing out that that GMP inspections, they're important. They're the kind of the core of the industry. So I'm happy to hear that it seems like they have not went down. We've all seen companies. What's the quickest way to get a company out of business, meaning they'll shut down or compliant? FDA comes in, they give them a bunch of 483s. They have to get compliant at that point. So yeah, I'm very
Yeah.
pro anything that'll help support more inspections, more resources, that type of thing. And then, Bill, on the tech side, I mean, I certainly can picture a world where it's kind of their FDA is already doing RRAs, remote regulatory assessments, which kind of help possibly prioritize or deprioritize in-person inspections. But I do see a world where kind of FDA is using programs like their AI program, ELSA, to go through all the paperwork related to the remote regulatory assessment. So then they're able to do more and more. And then when they do spend the boots on the ground resources, they're really targeting that, because there's companies that have been around for years and years that have never even been inspected.
That's true.
So it's sad. It's true. And I'm a big fan of, as you know, I run a tech company as well. So a big fan of technology to make our lives a little bit.
So, I'm talking about this in our industry now. We've done it on this podcast, but I'm also writing articles. I don't know if you saw the CRN webinar in December 9th. I was one of the 3 panelists talking about AI tech, with CRN, and that's the first trade association to start talking about this in our industry. It was Akash from Ingredient AI and Ken Myers on the regulatory side, how he's helping clients with leveraging this technology. But it's not just, you said it, it's not just going to be, it's going to make the jobs that they do more efficient by the laborious tasks that they can accelerate and do that. In terms of, will it identify more bad actors or whatever? I think that day will come. Probably when FDA comes knocking on my door down the road once we're in the market. So we'll talk about that another time. All right, let's talk about now transparency in the industry, substantiation and so on. We're already touching on some of this, but and again, this is my personal opinion, okay? But I've been in this industry a long time, and it's just good, bad, or indifferent. This is just the way the industry grew up, right? It's just the way it is. DSHEA is just the way it is based on what the industry was 30 years ago, right? So, or more. So it is, there's a cultural bias to that in our industry towards subjective science and marketing hype, especially 30 years ago, right? I mean, there wasn't a lot of science as there is today. And then we have a spectrum going to the other side of objective science and evidence-based supplementation. I talk about this all the time. That's where my company, NutriPsych, is really pushing to move the needle. It is exponentially going that direction. If you look like companies like Radical Science, who's one of our partners, and Alethos and Centers for Applied Health Sciences, Reputable Health, all these different CROs that are coming in, there's no reason today, in my opinion, that any product brand can't do clinical research on their product as a whole. That excuse is gone as far as I'm concerned. The barrier to entry to do that, it's not a cost center. If you're not doing it, and this is where our industry is going, I want to set the stage for this discussion. We are moving in that direction. The needle is moving that way. I hope to accelerate that exponentially. But again, today, I think because I was running a CRO years ago, 12, 13, 14 years ago, I couldn't get the time of day from companies to invest in research. It was too early because they said, well, what's the upside for that? I don't have to do it. That was what I always heard. So what do you guys think in terms of today and where we're going? I don't know if you see the same perspective from your guys' point of view, but what's adequate substantiation really? Because it is really subjective. I mean, even the research that's been done, all research in total, has a certain bias to it because of marketing trends or marketing departments or whatever, right? So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to start off. And Bill, I love the optimistic view of the substantiation, democratizing substantiation. I like it because it seems, I think
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of brands listening out there that would saying, "What do you mean? I don't have 250K to dedicate to a finished product test." So I love the vision. I think of substantiation kind of like a driver's license. The analogy of a driver's license is you have to have it to drive a car. You have to have it to market a dietary supplement. But you might go years and years without getting pulled over by a police officer and having to bust out your driver's license and show it. But when you have to bust it out, you better have it. You can't say, "Oh, I'll get that later." So it's one of those things
Right.
that there's so much art and science and nuance within building your substantiation dossier, and in lieu of a lot of companies having to quote show their work, we of course have the retailers. So we have retailers, of course, like Whole Foods that have their own nuanced approach to substantiation. Of course, it's got to be in a human clinical trial. That makes sense. It has to be in the matching dosage and strength. That makes sense. They're starting to require more companies to have their studies, substantiation assays on healthy populations. Of course, we know that's should be the case, but in reality, that's not the case. So we kind of, by default, we have the retailers as the other regulators that are really driving, I think, a lot of the substantiation. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Ivan. I'll turn it back over to you if you've any thoughts on that.
No, I agree. Again, so the FTC used to be the one driving
Right.
the substantiation, but for whatever reason, they just don't seem as involved as they used to be in that space. The FDA has never been involved in substantiation for dietary supplements, even though they could be in theory, but it's just not an area they play in. So the police, the gatekeeper, I suppose, is a retailer, and the police would be, the NAD and competitor challenges
Yeah.
and class actions these days, and state AGs might be, especially in California, might be
Right.
more active than the feds on substantiation.
Or Texas, the Gang of 10, right? Does that still exist, the Gang of 10?
Texas, California, yeah. So New York. Asa's point on the speed thing is the right one, and one we use all the time. NADs can be a frustrating experience. They are trying their best, I assume, but they don't always get it right, and it can be a very challenging experience. But if you do see I often get, as Asa does too, and I'm sure Bill does. You told me I couldn't say 12 things to Sunday, and look at these 40 competitors just saying whatever they want to say.
No, the biggest threat is NAD, for sure.
It's like you go to the NAD and we'll see what happens there, and they could ignore the NAD. So it's a tough situation, and to I think the sort of reference you made earlier, Bill. Like I've represented 1 million startups and Fortune 50 companies, and you would think that the risk tolerance or the level of substantiation would sort of be different. But I've seen big companies take lots of risks on little substantiation, and very small companies.
They put it. That's right, because they put in their budget. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but delay. But yeah, they put in their budget for that. I mean, I've worked for big companies here. It's in their budget to combat NAD.
The Ford Pinto story, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, it's a business model of the way to operate. But if you think about it from the bigger picture, take a step back, it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. And it is what it is, and that is, this is the cultural industry bias of the way it's operated. That is a big moving ship that's not going to course correct in a huge way on a dime, right? It's not going to do that. I think some people have that expectation that it would do that. Oh, if we have this, which leads me into the next question. Durbin just put forward again, mandatory product listing again. So I know the industry is kind of split on this, 50-50. Everyone I talk to, it's like 50-50. I don't see what honestly, I don't see what the downside is. The argument, this may be, maybe I don't know enough information. You guys can help me. But for me, it's like, well, because I've taken products to other countries where it is required of that. Was it more intensive in terms of doing the paperwork? No, it just took a little longer, but you actually had to submit your actual paperwork. I think the argument is like, oh, I don't want, this is intrusive, costly, whatever. I think that's just a smokescreen for I want to keep doing it the way I've been doing it. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that one? Because that's going to come up to a big topic again this year. It's not going to go away with Durbin.
Yeah, I'll jump in. And again, these opinions are my own and don't reflect any of my clients or my firm. Or
Well, these are all of our own opinions here, guys. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm siding with you, Bill. Is it going to weed out all the bad actors? No. Are bad actors still going to ignore it? No. Oh, yes. Is it going to be a little bit of a administrative burden on industry? Yes. Do we know what FDA is exactly going to do with the list? No. But I think optically, public trust wise, if the headline gets out there, the dietary supplement doesn't want any more regulation. They won't even agree to tell us what supplements they're marketing. It's just
Yeah.
it's just a bad talking point for public trust.
Yeah.
And the sky is falling. We have now the cosmetic industry, which is the test pilot, right? Up until 2 years ago,
That's
whatever it
right.
was, cosmetics didn't have to list, and now cosmetics are listing, and we have a lot of cosmetic clients, and they're just dealing with it. It's not the end of the world. So is it a can of worms? Maybe, but it's tough for me to argue that for public trust, it's not a bad
Right.
thing.
Yeah, it is. I think it's more the reason to do it for that than anything. People smoke screen of a lot of other stuff, but you're right. I think it's more of, because think about it. The agency is limited. They need help. They're going to politicians. They're reaching out to industry. It's like, how do we do this, guys? Help us, right? Well, if they do that, the public, I can tell you, because I've surveyed daily supplement users for my company, and I've heard a lot of feedback of the frustrations from daily consumers, because honestly, this is, again, my opinion, we don't do a good job of servicing the end consumer. Sorry. We really could do way better. And, even marketing teams of big companies that I've been involved with, whatever, they don't have a clue what the consumers really want. Okay. And I think you're right, from a public trust standpoint, this would be a big win for the agency. It's not, look, guys, it's not a huge administrative burden, in my opinion. I think it's a good thing. Other countries do it. So what's the big deal? Okay. Stop making, do you want to get the whole reform of DSHEA done instead? Nobody's going to do that.
Yeah.
Asa, what your thoughts here on this one? I think
I'll throw some counterpoints out there.
Sure.
So, we led off this conversation by talking about DSHEA, paraphrasing, maybe it's not broken, maybe it's under resourced or under enforced. And if there was an MPL, mandatory product listing, if we're having resource and enforcement priority issues with things that really matter, GMPs, safety, drug spike ingredient type things, and is that going to carry over for enforcing an MPL list, or is it going to spread it too thin? It's just my opinion. One thing I do like about MOCRA is this is not it's a private list, right? This is not a public searchable list, right? The MOCRA registration, I believe. Is that correct, Ivan? I think so.
That's right.
Yeah, and so when and if MPL does go through, I think having it as a private, not searchable list is important, because we don't want to make it any easier on the plaintiff's attorneys for looking through stuff. And guess what? Another counterpoint is the bad actors aren't going to register anyway. So what are we getting from it? I do really appreciate both your points on the build consumer trust point of view. I wonder if there's a way to build consumer trust without building a regulation that's probably not going to be properly enforced. And maybe it is that a private registration similar to MOCR. I'm not sure, but I just don't want to. I just don't like things that are more burdensome unless there's really a big benefit for them.
Oh no, there's certainly got to be a value add, right? Okay, and I think that's if there's anything the agencies have done about this, or Berderman or whoever, they haven't really successfully communicated the value add, in my opinion. So it could be a good thing. We already know the resource challenge, so how can you really make this execute on this and really do what you're talking about? Or is it just political posturing? Okay, because where's the value add for the industry here and for consumers?
Okay, in a way, there already is mandatory product listing for those products that make structure function claims, which is already being taken. Not every supplement makes a structure function claim, but
right.
A private searchable database by FDA, there's an ingredient that's got an issue, right? What supplements are safety issue? What supplements are selling that ingredient? I could see lots of useful tools for the FDA.
Yeah, I could see that.
To say that they have, and the risk of fighting even modest reform like this, to your point, Bill, is of course it's going to result in major reform, and so that's the sort of balance industry needs to consider, because there can be a huge overreaction. I think it's a question later. I used to do a lot of Consumer Product Safety Commission work, and there was an issue a few years ago of lead in children's toys coming over from China, blah, blah, blah. And, obviously we don't want lead in children's toys, but that created this extremely burdensome lead testing program that, if you were selling a baby blanket made of wool with no coloring, you had to pay someone to test it for lead, right? No lead in there. All it's going to take is one, God forbid, bunch of people die from some herb, and there's going to be an overreaction from Congress, and that's going to change. That's going to be the game changer, and that's usually what it is.
It's always reactive in terms of proactive, right? We're talking a little bit proactive here, but that's not the way our industry operates in the agencies, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I would also like to jump in with a counterpoint. I mean, I see the comments we're making, and I understand them, and I get it. With AI, I mean, we could probably run a couple deep research projects and then throw an algorithm on top and get a list of every dietary supplement containing L-theanine sold in the United States, just based on publicly available information. I mean, it's not in a database, but I think the information is probably out there. It's not as clean as searching it by ingredient, but I mean, AI is better than it was yesterday, and it'll be twice as good next week, type of thing. So just
it's a daily thing, because I pivoted to health tech entrepreneur here, so I'm not developing products anymore. I'm developing technology that's going to make our industry more effective and better information, better data. So it exists, but it's impossible for the consumer to find, and no regulation's ever going to make that perfect. It's just the nature of the beast. So let's leverage the technology to do that. I see our time, and I know I had more topics on our agenda. We could probably spend 2 hours talking about everything. So it was an ambitious agenda, guys. So that's okay. Well, we'll do this again. This is, like I said, a continuing, evolving thing. But we've touched on some of the points and the others as well. But I think probably let's wrap it up by just kind of looking at the future, where it's going, and kind of what you see in 26 and beyond, and also what should brands be doing, not just brands. And this kind of ties into one other thing. If ingredient companies do a lot of the research, and product brands are leveraging that science or whatever. I'm seeing this already in discussions with companies that I'm talking to right now daily. With our accelerator program, the companies are coming in that. And this is a big frustration I noticed with ingredient companies. I'll throw this in here because it layers into where the industry is going. So What I heard from major brands, all the guys out there, fit supply side and in discussions afterwards and before, was that they are frustrated with product brands because, as you know, ingredient companies have done the majority of the research, but they have no control once it leaves their warehouse in terms of what product brands do with it. Do they use the right dosage? Are they making the correct claims? There's a lot of brands that don't do that. In some cases, don't even use the branded name of the ingredient on the supplement facts. Now, Kaneka, for example, makes that a requirement. If you're going to use your ubiquinol, you got to say that on the label. But I was shocked to learn that actually some companies don't make that a requirement of product brands, probably because they want to do the business. So, right, it's a business decision, not necessarily where they want to go. So, we'll be able to help with that with what we're doing down the road. You'll see that coming. But what do you think for product brands or anybody in the space in terms of where we're going? What do you think the top three things or whatever it is should folks really be thinking about as they go forward in terms of marketing their products in our industry?
Ivan, you want to start off?
I'll give this one to you, Asa.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think that, kind of take a step back. We're living in this technology renaissance, amazing time. And there's never been a more important time to build authentic connections. So if brands want to connect with their consumers, how are they doing it? Are they building authentic connections? Are they making personalized videos? Are they doing podcasts? Are they going out and speaking at conferences? Are we, all getting a bite to eat at supply side? These personal connections have never been more valuable than ever. Sticking on AI, I chair the American Herbal Products Association's new Technology and AI Innovation Committee. And I actually talked to a company the other day. They're a $100 million plus company, and they don't allow any AI at their company, period. Well, that's not problem. That's like saying, that's tantamount to saying we're not going to have the internet for anything we do at our company.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Kind of the extreme approach. So kind of the smart thing that companies think about is start with an AI policy, AI use policy, an AI steering committee, give company, staff and employees safe parameters on how to be creative within the use cases that work for marketing or production and that type of thing. And I really, to bring it kind of back to one of our earlier topics on influencers, influencers are amazing. I love influencer marketing. But I think we're going to see more and more enforcement of influencers not doing the basics, not disclosing material connections, kind of working with Ivan and firm or your favorite expert attorney to build an influencer contract. Although it seems so basic, Ivan, I see this all the time. Companies don't have any internal procedures on influencers or influencer contracts. So I'll stop there. I could probably talk about this for 30 minutes, but I will say the future is bright and the future is scary and the future is amazing. And so it's a great honor to do talks like this with some of my favorite people in the industry to get that word out there.
I love that. Ivan.
As usual, this is a tough act to follow. AI and GLPs are two game changers in the next couple of years. Yeah. And those are two areas to be certainly focusing a lot of attention on. And I think, I heard an AI talk and, no one's really thinking about how it's going to revolutionize work and give people more leisure time. Right. I think what, if you used to be transcribing your notes, that took an hour or two. Now you've got that time free, right? Et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
So I think the focus, I think people are going to have even more time to focus on health and wellness and leisure activity and enjoying.
I agree.
So, people tapping in, and then obviously with weight loss, they're going to be healthier with GLP-1s, hopefully, letting them be more active. So, I'm probably not saying anything no one knows, and I'm not a marketer, although I try to pretend like I'm one. But figuring out, where people are going to be spending their dollars and leisure time,
Yeah.
and helping them on their weight loss journeys on GLP-1s, certainly, ripe targets for well substantiated, well human connected, and people are going to be looking for those human connections as well. So,
Of
wellness
course.
journeys, et cetera, et cetera, I think are going to
And
be big. And then,
I,
investing in, and as AI gets better, and as the, people are going to be searching for substantiated brands, and making sure your claims are backed by good science and not just a
yeah,
celebrity endorser is going to be more and more important.
yeah, I agree. And we talked a lot about this in the CR webinar in December. And uh, if you get a chance to go back and listen to that, I recommend that because it's really the first industry discussion talking about that in terms of how this technology is going to change. And I can tell you from my own perspective, because I'm raising capital, talking to investment firms around the world and stuff, this is a global thing, okay? And this is coming top down from I'm part of startups.com. I'm an advisor with them and the lead advisors and big investment firms. Last year was kind of the shiny new toy investment, billions being invested into the tech and different aspects of the industry. A lot of flash and trash, or GPT wrappers, we call it, right? It's on the surface, right? But that's the correction we're going to see. It's not a dot-com bubble, for those of us long enough around to remember that. This is a super cycle where we're going to see a correction. And now, with the investment into, and this is all industries, but this includes ours, is going to be looking for those companies who have the domain expertise. So all the fear factor of it's going to take people's jobs or whatever, not really. Maybe laborious task stuff that you paid somebody to do, but it's going to migrate to creating other jobs. You still have the human factor in this, okay? You still have trade shows, meeting with people face to face, or on video calls, at least in podcasts like this. This is never going to go away, guys. We're just going to get more efficient at it, and we are going to have more free time. I know in my own personal life, I have more free time because I'm leveraging the technology to help me do laborious tasks. Okay. I think we're all probably trying to do that. If you're not, you should be. And that was kind of our take home. I think Akash from Ingredient AI said this. He said the train's left the station. So if you're not on board to start leveraging the technology in your business, the train has already left the station. So we're in that super cycle. That's what they call it, which you said it, Asa, without knowing it. But that means the birth of the internet, semiconductors, mobile computing. These were major technologies that transformed the world and cultures. That's what this technology is going to do. So it's not, and there's lots of ways to improve your company, especially legacy companies got, infrastructure that how do they integrate that? This is the huge challenge, by the way. My tech partner and I talk about this all the time of how do you integrate this into everyday tasks, accounting or whatever within your company to make it more efficient. So it's not just some of the things we've talked about of how can the FDA not shortcut, but expedite. Sorry, trying to find the bad actors or whatever using this technology. It's going to come. It'll get there. But again, I'm always a glass half full guy. I always have been. To me, it's all we're helping, despite all the challenges, despite all the problems. These types of products do benefit people's health. There's no question about that. If anyone today, maybe 30 years ago, there was debate, they don't do anything, it's a black box, right? Well, you can't make that argument anymore, in my opinion. So they do improve people's life. I mean, look, they've improved my life personally and others that I know personally, right? And I think you guys probably could say the same. So we're going to keep pushing forward to educate people, to talk about this industry, bring on folks like you guys all the time and continue to do that. Gene and I will continue to do that. We don't take any money for this. We do it. It's a passion project for us. Nobody comes on our show, pays to come on our show. There are podcasts like that. That's not us. Okay. And it's not worth it for me to try and make a business out of it, to do it that way, because it's really about building relationships and educating people. And the more we do that, the better it's going to be. So information is key here. Okay, telling
Yeah,
people that,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. And if it's okay, Bill, I'd love to just share a really
Yeah,
interesting use case in my
sure.
world. It's kind of a humble plug, but it's not really intended to do that. So this week, I'm launching as part of Apex Compliance Nova AI. It's an AI regulatory assistant, an AI agent that lives within the platform. So I was doing some demos earlier today, and someone said, I've spent hours and hours building a training document for getting new marketing and regulatory people onboarded. And I said, really, this is a good use case for Nova AI. I put in, build me a training program for becoming a supplement regulatory expert. And in 12 seconds, it was a customized platform with implied claims, UGC, influencers, kind of a really good use of AI to kind of help onboard and get people up to that level, working level of expertise. And I'm really excited about the possibility of democratizing regulatory compliance. It's really
Oh
fun
yeah.
to be part of this. It's all the stars are starting to align, which I'm
Well,
really grateful to
and
see.
you said earlier, I'm trying to democratize the science piece. So I mean, even scientists, we don't agree. We'll look at a clinical study and the p-values and argue over 0.001 versus 0.05. You know what I mean? It's kind of silly. And so, and from a legal standpoint, in terms of, it doesn't even fall into that realm in terms of how that's a factor of making a claim on something. It's either the claim's a disease claim or a structure function, right? It doesn't, not a lot of gray area there. But so again, for me, I want to democratize the science. I want us to move to really objective science so that we can uh, service the consumers better at the end of the day. That's why we're all here. We wouldn't have jobs if it wasn't for the consumers buying supplements. So, right?
True that.
True that. Any final comments, Ivan? If not, I'll take us out of here and we'll close it up.
No, I love Asa's story, but I do want to caution people to solely rely on what ChatGPT tells you at this point. uh,
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
can't
Yeah.
tell you how many emails I've gotten, but ChatGPT says this. ChatGPT isn't right. So
Yeah.
until
Oh yeah, from an attorney's perspective.
use it, but
Yeah.
what's it? Use and verify, whatever the right answer is. Until we get
Trust
even
but
better.
verify. Yeah, and
Yeah,
humans are
exactly.
important for sure.
Exactly.
Well, that's why they have the disclaimer, and I deal with this too because people come to me and say, I'm talking about what I'm doing with my company, and I've had these comments from people like, well, this is generative AI, it's GPT, and I said, no. What we're doing is machine learning, predictive AI, which has been around for years. What you're seeing today now is generative AI, which is this which creates new content. But where's it getting that information? It's scraping it from the internet. Okay, so it's good and bad. There's crap out there on the internet, whatever an influencer said or whatever. So yeah, I can imagine the challenges you have, Ivan, from your attorney perspective of people come to, well, GPT said this. Actually, I can't believe somebody would come to you and tell you that in the first place. But okay, to me that's like shocking, but maybe not. So use it responsibly. Anyone who's listening, go watch the CRN webinar because we talked a lot about this stuff too in terms of being responsible with that and how we leverage the technology. It's just like anything else, uh, verify, check, whatever. Something's not right. You can't. I think some people are. I think it's human nature. They're leveraging GPT and they think, oh, I can just do my job like this and this is the answer and that's it. End of story. Well, that's lazy. Okay, so and then people are generally lazy. I'm sorry, this is my opinion as well, but they don't want to do the work. Okay, so it's not going to replace doing the work. You still have to do the work in there. You still have to give it good inputs and good prompts. So if you're giving it good prompts, it can return a better answer for you in terms if you're using GPT that way. But anyway, guys, loved having you on the show. We could keep going on this, I'm sure. And as usual, it's uh, we'll see each other at the next event or whatever it is. I'm sure. I always look forward to those. I'm always excited about that. Unfortunately, the only one I go to is supply side. I I don't go to Expo anymore. It's been years because I don't watch any finished products anymore, and it's all CPG now. So I'm not really in that space. But um, that's the big one for me. And let's continue the conversations out there. And sometime down the road, guys, we're building a partnership of companies that are like-minded with NutriSelect. Maybe you guys can be part of that, because I envision us doing a full education session talking about the technology and how we're using it responsibly in the industry. So I'll keep you posted on that, and I'd love to have you guys join in on that conversation too. All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, sit tight. Don't disconnect yet. I'm going to take us out, and we got to upload the show here, so to make sure it uploads. All right. So again, thanks for joining, and Gene. Let's hope Gene gets better, and we'll see him on the next one here. We'll see you guys later. They're listening, and that's it. We'll take it out.